all for being here. Kate, are we live? Okay, we're live. So, and then Ian, we're filming. So, okay, let's get going. Thank you all for being here today. This is our final presentation for the second charrette for the Town of Beech Mountain Commercial District Planning Project. And I've seen a lot of you before. Who's been here for other presentations? Almost everybody? Okay, a few new people. Welcome. So what we're doing is each time we're advancing this plan a little bit farther, we start with a quick recap of past stuff, and then we get into the new work. And if you've been here this week, there's a lot of new work that you haven't seen that's happened in the last couple of days. Tremendous work effort by the Honorable and Reverend team, the design team. So this team, as you know, is from mostly from the southeast. Roanoke, Charlotte, Johnson City, Tallahassee, Greenville, Charlottesville, and Saratoga says it's actually from New York. So you've got a remarkable group of people that collaborate well together and have done a lot of downtown planning for the last few decades. Now, your contribution. If you haven't put your dot on the map, please do it. We have a collection going of where we live, and Whitney's back here in charge of the map. The reason I say this is I know some people have not been really good about it, and yesterday we had this lady, I don't know if you all know her, but she never did put a dot on the map, and when Caitlin asked her to come on over, she just went on into the woods. So if you know her, ask her to come back and put her dot on the map. Okay, so Charrette 2 recap. A lot of you, we've got pictures of you here. We know you're here, so I appreciate all your contributions. And just really super quick, why we're here. Change is coming. Either make a plan for managed growth, or it's going to manage us. We need an actionable plan. We need a cooperative plan. And economically, at a minimum, any new development, this one in particular, has got to support itself. So right now, we're here. There's some momentum for change. We've actually felt the momentum grow as we've been here this week, and I want to show you some of the results. If you haven't seen all of these fascinating films, they're available on the town website. 11 hours of fun. I think we may be up to like 14 hours of fun, and you can review them at any time that you want. All of these are caught on film, including today. So if you have to leave early, you can come back and review. And as you remember, all of the studies that we're doing are based on economic reality. Aaron Arnett, our economist, has told us there's about 152,000 square feet that would be supportable right now. That's a very conservative estimate. It's 20% of the half-hour driving zone, 10% of the 15-minute driving zone would reveal this much. And you can see the categories that it's in. I mean, you think about it from a space planning perspective, it's essentially, you could support right now the downtown district of West Jefferson, North Carolina, just thinking about the size and shape of that. Now, we have this sort of national demographic stuff, but we wanted to support it with local reality. And that's where Whitney comes in. She's been working on some good mischief, so we'll get her to tell you about it.
So if you stopped at a pop-up with me, you probably explored back there. You've seen a jar full of little animals, and I call them good mischief. And what we were trying to do is just spread a little bit of whimsy around, and I gave these to kids or adults, and wherever you wanted to put them and leave them so that someone else could find them, we call that good mischief. And if you were a child and you left it in a place where that your parents found it because you forgot about it, then it's bad mischief. One of our pop-up events, I gave out just about 200 rubber ducks. Apparently I left one in my car, so there's at least $1.99 at your Sip and Slide event, which is really fun for kids. And they also got to play with Legos and build what they wanted to see in Beech Mountain. And so this kind of just, I've been up here a lot, just trying to make sure that we connect with as many people as we can about finding out what do they think about some of the ideas we had in the first charrette. Are there some things that we didn't think about that we can collect more information? And what we heard and what was reaffirmed, which is the next slide, it's kind of this focus on a pedestrian area, creating walkable places. A lot of people love the traffic calming because we heard in the early meetings that they didn't want really to be a stoplight town. So how do we go about that? It came up a lot, probably because I was at places that were events, to have more spaces for events and programming, and to kind of coordinate how that is marketed. And then we had gondola came back up, and connecting greenways and affordable housing options were all things that came up in these conversations. And then in the next slide, some new ideas that I heard was that they wanted to plant more trees. They wanted to make sure that Beech Mountain stays this kind of, that you're not losing your canopy. They had some additional business ideas, and maybe some of you in the room were part of that. A holding cell for town hall, that was a new one for me. They thought if there more people were here, they might need a holding cell. Some said no to a gas station. Swimming hall, and I remember, I talked to a lot of kids. And so kids really like things that they can play on and play with. So community pools, parks, and we had heard some of that before. And then specifically a swimming hole, that came up a lot. And then, because again, I was up here on the 4th of July, I heard a lot about how to get here quicker, because they want to get, when they're up here, they love it and they want to get here as quickly as possible. And so that's either from just some visitors from out of town, some people that are staying a little bit longer. And then another idea that I thought was really interesting was that we had a conversation around, was when people have different ages of children, having places where you can have that different age play in the same place.
Okay, also to supplement this work, we have a community survey up. It's still up. Last day is tomorrow. So if you haven't taken the survey, please take it. We've already gotten 448 responses.
Great.
Right, which is really good.
Yeah.
And so whether you're a resident or just here for the week, it's fine. Please take the survey. Tell us what you want. Okay, next.
And there are cards at the mischief table. You can also take some mischief with you today if you like, and you can take, if you haven't taken the survey, you can take a card with you.
So far, this is called a word cloud. It's a way to see what kind of responses are coming up the most. And it's remarkable to us how much people love their outdoor things and their recreation things. The Buckeye Rec Center, ski resort, Coffee Lake hiking trails, 5506 Sky Bar, that's the one at the very top. Fred's got a big, it's mentioned a lot. Fred, you're mentioned a lot. And then, so it's very interesting in kind of association with the great outdoors that we see at Beech Mountain. So pretty cool. This is the whole survey compressed. Top answer survey said, priorities for downtown commercial district. Number 1, 2, and 3, safety, overall attractiveness, amount of green space. What retail businesses would you like? Casual sit-down restaurants was the number 1 vote getter, followed by bakery, family-friendly entertainment. What other types of businesses would you like to see? Medical services, like doctor or urgent care, salon, indoor recreation and wellness. What types of public spaces are needed? Live music, parks and rec, and events. So if you don't like any of those answers, you get one more chance. Get into that survey, tell us your own, okay? And there are a number of other questions like that. So as part of our work, we're also looking at the transportation part, and we've done a little bit of a deeper dive I'm going to share with you. There's not only the transportation and parking of the new facility we're thinking about, but all the existing issues. And so to deal with that, we got we got this guy here. You probably saw him out there yesterday with the yellow vest. This is Bill Wunsch, our transportation guy, and he'll visit with you a little bit about the transportation part.
David, I realize now I should have worn my yellow vest consistent with the video. And it was funny, I started to measure something the other day. Tom stepped out and took a picture. I said, well, wait a minute, there's a yellow vest on. So if my staff sees me out messing around the road with that yellow vest, we've been a fuss. But yeah, we've been looking at the transportation elements out here. The town of Beech does to kind of get involved with two sides of the transportation. One is looking at existing conditions and opportunities, and this is everywhere between the ski resort, outside of town. So what kind of issues are out there now and what can be addressed in the short term. But also, thinking that land use and transportation go together. The two sides of the same coin. You really can't think about one without thinking about the other. They just have to be planned together. So we're plugging in with the design team as well and providing some commentary on that. So some of the things I'm going to go over, just to tell you in advance, working process, things we're working on. We've accumulated some traffic data, some interesting facts about traffic flows and how they vary. Safety, where are the common response issues where people get themselves in trouble on the roads? Parking, a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about what kind of improvements we can think about in the short term. Again, this is all an early working process, so catching as early as we're going to develop more as we go along, of course. And then with the new development, we're going to be looking at parking and new trip generation and what goes along with all of that. So, thinking about what we know, it's an interesting road system up here, mountain town, and, you do have the big trucks. You think maybe there's not that many big trucks up here, but there are big-sized trucks. They're not the 67-foot over the highway ones or the double units that you see on the freeways, but they're sizable vehicles that are going to need to be considered as we think about roadway needs and geometry in the future. We also have little vehicles, golf carts getting around, so we got to think about safety and accommodating everybody in the mix. And seasonal fluctuations, what kind of road users, tourists, they're going to need some clear direction on how to get around. Parking and safety, wintry conditions, what do you do with cars running off the road? How do you help deal with that without stopping up the whole road system because somebody's turned sideways in a Volkswagen Jetta with two-wheel drive and through the snow? But anyway, so moving through this, the town has some traffic count stations, and you shared some data with us. I think we got data through January. We're working on getting some new data now. This is the count information on the Banner Elk side of town. And what you'll see here is the traffic volumes on a monthly basis, and I'll show you some other slides for hourly and daily. But on a monthly basis, look at the difference in vehicles coming up the hill and coming into your town. 60,000 in the slow month, up to 160,000 in January, peak time. So just these huge variations in traffic volumes to think about as we plan some network transportation improvements. Not a graph, so there's not a test on this. But there's some key points to be made here. Comparing October and January, these are looking at peak hourly flows. Right, so coming up the hill there in October, in each direction, the highest directional volume is about 85 cars in an hour. Sunday that's about 100, again in one direction. But in January that grows. It's like 5 times the amount of cars. In a peak hour in that direction, it goes up to about 400 cars. So it's stuff we need to be thinking about.
Where was this data collected actually?
That is, I guess, is Preston in the room? I believe it's on the Banner Elk side of the town, coming up.
Before the white roof on the parkway.
Yeah. Yes. So, NCDOT might look at their data and say you got about 3,500 cars a day, but really, that's just when they took their count. When you think about it over the full course of a year, what are the averages and what are the peaks and what's the bigger story to tell when we think about the traffic data. This is now, we looked at hourly, we looked at monthly, then hourly, now we're thinking about daily trips. In October, 3,000 cars a day-ish, down numbers here. In January, 8,000 cars a day, so 2.5 times. Just a huge difference in volumes. And when you're thinking about applying for funding and telling a story about your traffic situation, it has to be a full picture cold with that. People need to understand that there's much bigger traffic coming up and down that mountain in certain months. So, additionally, this starts to inform the need for some more road network, and that's what you've seen. You've been showing up and looking at these different graphics, the community design teams looking at parallel roads. Maybe the tourists are using the parkway, but when that fills up and gets super busy in the future, you'll have other ways to go. As locals, you'll know how to get around on that. Some parallel roads, parallel road network connectivity, starting to build out a grid of roads. And that's really helpful for dealing with congestion, or if there's incidences. And this isn't a real map, so I just do some arrows like pointing here. We'll show you the real grids. So that's kind of the so what factor of these volumes and how high they are and how they're growing. What we learned about safety. There's a handful of locations that tend to have a lot of issues. This is information the town provided to us. It represents a 3-year window and incidences that have been responded to. The dot up here is around the resort, ski resort entrance. About 36 times they've had to go out and deal with something up there, 4 injuries. And then we also see issues in the switchbacks, particularly coming out of the bottom down here. I think in the inclement weather, and I'm kind of looking around the room, please correct me if I'm saying anything wrong here. But I have to imagine this when the inclement weather sets in, people get into that first steep switchback. That's when you learn that your tires and 2-wheel drive's not getting back out of here. And you start blocking up the road and needing some response, right? So just some things we've, in our period of discovery, have found and things we'll be looking at some potential solutions for. This is really the same slide. It just shows it a little differently with the aerial. So parking supply. Initial estimates are about 1,179 spaces between kind of your major points here, between the resort parking, resort overflow in town, and some miscellaneous public parking, the town hall, and then down in around the lake by Buckeye. 1,179, and I had some staff go through and just kind of deduce, looking at changes in volumes and some of that traffic volume information. We think, as of today, we're thinking you're about 200 spaces short between these different uses, but we'll refine this as we go along. And certainly, in the bigger picture, again, we're thinking land use and transportation. As the community design plans come along, we're also looking at parking needs for that. So it all goes together, which is short now and which you're going to need in the future. So just information we're developing. Some ideas that have come to mind as of today. So in your switchbacks, if you had a widened paved shoulder, you might have to get into regrading on the hill a little bit. Just an example of an area that cars could pull off or be moved out of the travelway more comfortably when it snows or when it gets stuck to help keep traffic going. So that's what this is illustrating is kind of before and after, just kind of crude sketching here. Just some paved areas over on the edge, inside of the switchbacks could be beneficial. Thinking about the ski resort parking lot, a lot of the problem there has to do with the left turns, trying to manage traffic with the left turns in and out, people get stopped up. Once heavy traffic stops while you're waiting on left turns, it just starts backing up. It's hard to, it just keeps backing up. So a good way to manage that is a roundabout. And this is the compact size roundabout here. Very safe intersection configurations. I know you all have seen them all over North Carolina. It's really the preferred intersection configuration. It's kind of our go-to these days versus trying to build left turn lanes. But we test fitted it with our engineers, and this is just an example of how one can fit in there at Steve Resort entrance. Try to unlock some of that congestion there. Pedestrian crossings, this needs to be part of the discussion too, especially as volumes continue to grow. And if we can tell the right story to NCDOT for funding, potentially some organized crossings that have active traffic flashers. I'm sure you all have seen these around. You hit a button and the yellow lights flash. The cars know parkways, you can cross the Red Sea there and get across. So we're thinking about that. In the parking, right, so parking, what can be done differently there? Active variable message signs. So this means there's these systems out there now. It's really incredible, especially with AI, that use cameras and they can tell you how many spaces are left, even if it's not marked spacing. They can look at it. The cameras using AI can look at an area and say there's still 12 spots left there. They could relay that down the hill, so people coming into the development see a sign saying there's still parking up there, or there's not. And then a lot of problems happen when cars circulate, just keep circulating looking for parking. So to be able to communicate where that parking is more effectively would be a good improvement. Some more wayfinding signs perhaps. Maybe there's more shuttle strategies that could be involved. And this would go with the whole parking management plan where sometimes we look at, there's free parking, cheap parking over there, but you got to get on the shuttle or there's more expensive parking close by. So just some things, some strategies to bring to the table that could be considered as we move on through this process. Then, of course, with the community planning, there's the town center aspect, and this is really important here. Thinking about the walkable streets, and how we want parking to help be a traffic calming device, if you will. And we really want to avoid the exposed large parking lots and integrate the parking into the plan. We hear a lot more about that when we have time. David talk more about the plan. So
this one, I think this
yeah,
one
it's like Hopkins.
what was that? Edlin, right?
Edlin.
So this one, the parking strategy to go right behind that, we looked at some ideas from Aspen, Colorado, which is, they had their town first and then built the ski resorts, which a little bit backward. But the idea is fascinating, which is, well, you can do premier parking on the hotel sites that cost you $50 a day. We have a town green with 400 space drive underneath it, $25 a day. If you walk to your hotel, they have a 4-day parking pass anywhere in the downtown, $16. Just you can move your car around place to place, but the idea is to park it once and leave it, or parking off-site with shuttle service for free. So, the whole gamut is here, and then really important for them and really workable for you guys. Walk from town center to the ski lift. So there's a lot of really good ideas here that you'll start to see developing in our plan. We'll show you from there. One other graphic that this is interesting because when we started this project, Google wouldn't dare send us this way because the roads were washed out from the hurricane, right? But even from what we're noticing is Blowing Rock, Banner, Elk, getting up the traditional way, from the south side of the mountain. This is where a lot of the problems are. Google will now route you, since it's fixed, 321 around to the north side of the mountain, so that you come in down near the lake, Buckeye Lake. And so from Johnson City, from Boone, from most places, during a snowy day, even though it might not make sense if you know the geography, this is a much better and safer way to come. So we'll be showing you in a few minutes some strategies to better use that your Buckeye Lake facility if you want to park there and take the shuttle off.
Yeah, so now we're moving past kind of what's the existing issues into how we'll support the design team. So the critical, important question will be, well, how much new traffic will the development, will the new town center bring? And in fact, we're anticipating a lot of it's you all, right? It's here local, so, but there will be some new traffic coming up and down. We've got methods to estimate traffic, new traffic demand, and how much more traffic this will put on the roads, and which section of the roads, more importantly, and how it spreads out across the grid in a beneficial way. We're also looking at parking strategies, parking projections, how many spaces are needed, how the different uses interact. There's, say, your morning coffee shop won't need its parking in the evening when you're, pick a use, your wine tasting place is operating in the evening, for instance. So the shared use parking. So we're looking at how the parking and different uses can interact in a way to help minimize what's needed for the parking that's support what the businesses need. We're looking at, as the designers come up with the different road grid networks, we're looking at what the intersections need to look like. And again, thinking about the different vehicles that will be traversing those roads and intersections. These are just representative graphics. Early in the process, we were thinking maybe a roundabout and elderberry, but that has since moved in the plans. You won't see that in the new plans. But it just represents kind of how we're thinking about, at an intersection, are we thinking a little compact mini roundabout or more larger roundabout, because we've got big vehicles going through it. And you'll see various roundabouts in the design plans, but our engineers will be testing it in the background, making sure it passes muster with NCDOT, all design standards, and it's constructible. We're also working collaboratively with the design team, thinking about road network and how we can be sure we're satisfying NCDOT's criteria and effectively communicating the concepts with them. NCDOT talks in terms of rural, suburban, town center roadways that are classified arterials, collectors, local roads. So be sure that we're coming up with road recommendations that are consistent with the various NCDOT guidelines. This next table is just an example of, they've got their criteria, but within the criteria, there's room to work to get context sensitive, so sensitive to the needs of Beech Mountain. So at the end of the day, we want roads that fit your context, fit your community. We're not looking to have really big roads that fit in Raleigh or something like that. But working within their criteria, but making it fit Beech Mountain. So there's a menu of road typical sections and illustratives here that show kind of how your roads could look and function in the future. And
Thank you. So these are starting to be the building blocks of the roads in the town center. So I think I will show each one of these. The first one, new parkway. You haven't seen this one. It's not the existing parkway. This will be a kind of new, larger road to convey people from one side of the mountain to the other. It would have 10-foot drive lanes, but parking on either side. And special for Beech Mountain, a great big verge, we call this, on the outer part of the parking, maybe 15 feet wide, with trails set beyond that. And the idea is places to put the snow. We've heard you all have something a little different from Wilmington and Raleigh. You got to put the snow somewhere. So that becomes in this great big verge, and it also helps to separate, walkers from the traffic. Town Center Street, we still have the 10-foot drive lanes and the 8-foot parking lanes, but we also have 12-foot sidewalks, great big tree pits, great big trees in the new downtown. In residential areas, 18-foot wide Yield Street, that's 2 lanes, but it's not the same 2 lanes that you'll see along, like big highways like Route 105. These are narrow, so narrow that sometimes if you're driving along in a great big pickup truck, one of them kind of has to move over a little bit so the other one can get by. That's intentional because it calms the traffic. People will not go too fast through this because you just can't. Off the edge of the Hill Street, we have parking with trees in the parking, in islands, and this is also set up so that it starts to absorb the water, and also could be a place where you can pack snow off the street and it would absorb down through the pavers, sidewalks on the side. The last one is alleys. In the center part of town, the idea is to get a lot of the parking back at the back, and so alleys is a new idea for Beech Mountain. You see them in some of North Carolina's older towns. 10-foot drive lane, 30-foot right-of-way, so the garages can be set back, so you can kind of swing that big F-250 into the garage, and it'll still work. So there's a lot of green space in the alleys. So these will be the building blocks of the downtown. And finally, you guys seem so interested in this. We're continuing this idea with Park Circle. The great big circle. That'll have it's one way, 10-foot drive lane, parking on the outside, great big 3/4 acre park in the middle, and on the outside, great big sidewalks with the trees and lights. Okay, so I'll go through this fast because most people have seen it, and if you want a longer version, it's on the film. So remember, we did studies based on your unique characteristics. Particularly, you can't take a bad picture in Beech Mountain because it's all about the views, both internally and externally. Look at that. There's a lot of pictures. Caitlin, in the next picture, a lot of views from the top of the mountain out. Spectacular in every direction, right? But also, you've got a number of views that are really pretty internal. You know, here we are on the top of Sledding Hill looking at our own town. There's some really pretty views inside of Beech Mountain. So we're going to work with both of those as we orient the streets and the commons so that everybody can enjoy both of those. And you remember, last Tuesday we showed you 3 different concepts on how they fit on that mountaintop piece of land. So, back up, please. To orient you on all of them, here's Town Hall, top of the ski slope. This public works area is here. Pinnacle is this great big form here. And so the first concept really dealt with this idea of the sledding hill, some commercial development around it, transitioning to residential, and we call it, this is like a great big New England common idea, okay? And if you look at the Beech Mountain Parkway, this is a public works lot mostly. It'll show you how it fits onto that plan. And so it fits very gracefully, trying to give everybody a view. And then we studied, we can show a couple other of these. You can see how it drapes across. This is what we call the saddle landform, like sitting on a saddle. That way, this way, horse's head up there. But you orient the town so that it sits on the flat part of the landscape and gives lots of people great views. And this one is from the 5506 sky bar, looking down what you'll see as the town is built in that area. So another concept, this one was much more of a romantic version with the curvilinear roads that might fit the mountaintop better than the square grid. And so you'll see the roads are more curvy and they're bound by these big park commons, and it clusters the development into smaller pieces. And so, again, we'll go through these studies. You can see in these pictures how that one fits on the mountaintop from all these different angles. Kind of trying to build the view up to the top there, and you can see the same thing from the top up and down. And then the last concept was oriented around a great big circle that you can see from outer space, and a long greenway that comes into the village, splits the development going both ways. And this one was especially oriented around, getting that access up to the ski lift. And so you can see how that one fits in. And so over the last couple of days, people reviewed these and said, well, we kind of like this part of this one and this part of that one. And so can you kind of merge these with some of the best ideas out of each? And so that's what brings us to today. We've gotten them down to 2, okay? And it's not this part of the other, this part of the other. We almost have 2 completely different strategies of how to go about doing this. Both of these options, I believe it was Ann from the, I said, we really like the circle, we really like call it the Ann plan, right? Both of them will feature this, but really has to do with the strategies break down like this. Do you want to go quickly so that we keep everything within its existing property lines and don't really have to deal with that? Or would you rather take a little bit more time and try to really work out some swaps and things? This one will be the way to go quicker. This one will take a little bit more time because it really deals with a little bit more complexity, but it gets that more romantic, curvilinear picture up on the mountain. So I'm going to ask Tom to come up and really take us through both of these plans, and we get to see those and really how they relate to the mountaintop.
Thanks, David.
traditional plan, and it's basically we sharpened our pencil with kind of that more of the grid plan that we showed you before, and started working with specific property owners on their property, so that there wasn't, people use the term horse trading. We have to go like, trade land, the town would trade land with the, different property owners, so that they got the right, combination of things in the right location. And so, so what this shows is you can see a grid, and the grid is the streets are white, and we also have green streets. Like every other block is a green street, but these are the classic kind of square blocks you see in many traditional towns, historic towns in America that make up some of the best places, the best, towns in America. And then as part of it, for example, this is one property owner. This is James and Jimmy's, pizza, and all of this right here. And we were showing how they could actually develop all of their kind of extra land around their existing two or three buildings here as part of this grid system. And then the elders, which own, the family owns a lot of open land, also have this, I think it's 15 acres back here next to the Pinnacle. And within their property, we showed how they could develop this with mixed use and a hotel footprint as well. I think they actually control some of this property too, and how that's embedded in the grid. Now, those two pieces, if we were in a suburban zone somewhere else, it'd just be a big building with a bunch of parking lots surrounding it. That the only way you really get there. Finish
There's
it.
nothing there.
It's okay. It's like a light.
Check that out.
So anyway, maybe there's okay. Here come some people. I think we're okay. Yeah. All right. So we're not doing that here. We're trying to create a walkable town. So the idea is to connect kind of these kind of anchoring development potentials in a way that actually weaves together as a town center. And so, the system of streets and blocks in this kind of simple grid, kind of a modified grid, works very well. And also the idea there's an overlay of not just streets and developable property, but also greenways and green connections and natural areas. So you're balancing open space with development areas, and both of those link all of this together. You can see how it's all woven together throughout the community. And then this is actually the same sledding hill as it exists. That property that's used for the sledding hill is exactly the same location. And then all of the town's property here becomes part of the kind of what we call the urban fabric, kind of the neighborhood that can have a lot of different, kinds of housing choice and some mixed use. And then also there's some land over here. This is actually I don't know the gentleman's name, but this is the one large house on the large property that is not involved with this plan so far. But this is another elder tract that we hope that could be designed so that it could be linked into, you could walk, and this could be actually developed as additional housing in this location with greenways that connect out. So you have the system, you have to kind of get around the Pinnacle. So this is how we're kind of weaving it all together. Now, there's some main ways of getting through. For example, this street as part of the grid with also a greenway on it runs all the way through, and so you basically all the housing and development along it is it's great. I mean, you step out of say your home on the front porch and look down. You have a great view that way. You also have a great view towards Sugar and Grandfather, and also you probably can see the Pinnacle and that type of thing. But you're also embedded in the neighborhood, so it's not just all about kind of the great views on the edges. We're getting a lot of really it's about views and also having a really charming walkable system of streets and blocks.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Can I ask a question? The section that's directly in front of Pinnacle, where's the town trash collection area?
This area. Yeah.
Okay, so that would be moved, is this residential
Yeah, all this,
now?
yeah, everything within this area, basically the whole area will be redeveloped.
Okay,
And all of the public works stuff will be relocated.
thank you.
Yeah, great. Okay, we'll keep going, because I think we'll, you know. And so this is an interesting map because it shows all the different property lines, different property ownerships, overlaid on this plan. And also what's in yellow is the areas that would be developed. Then what's in, you know, kind of white are either streets or open space. And so you can see, yeah, okay. And you can see, you can study, we have that, I think this is printed out on the walls back here. So you can kind of study, if you own property here, if you know property, you're curious about property, you can see where it kind of lands in both plans. This is, you know, the system of streets. You know, in some cases, you know, we're just kind of proposing for future, even though right now, you know, that isn't a possibility. But, you know, everything's in phases. Everything has to be in phases. So, you know, you start and you hope to continue weaving things together. Next. And then this is the open space. You know, with all the kind of linear greenways, these parks, the sledding hill that go through. Okay? And then this is what we call the 5-minute walk radius. That basically, it's a 5-minute walk from the edge of the circle to the center of the circle. And you can see there's kind of like maybe about a 10-minute walk from one end to the other. So it's very, very walkable, and because, you know, it's full of sidewalks and trails, this is probably going to be the primary mode of transportation once you park. You know, we call this a park once town center. You shouldn't need to actually use your car. If you come here to ski for 4 days, you can park once, walk to skis, walk to restaurants, hang out where you live, where you're living, and, you know, all that kind of, you know, fun stuff. Next, please. And then this is just the overall image you can see of the plan. And then here's some of the cool 3D Google Earth. You can see this. You can see the connection across here, and, you know, the fuse out all the way in this direction from this view, which is really interesting. Next. This is the saddle, and this is, you know, your Pinnacle mountaintop. And this street right here, which is part of this is kind of your main street. We call it classic, you know, main street that's right on axis with the peak of the mountain, intentionally done that way. And a close-up. Yeah.
Is it appropriate to ask a detailed question at this point?
I'm sorry, what?
Is it appropriate to ask a detailed question?
Actually, some people have to leave early, so if we could get through it, that would be great.
Cool.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then it's part of the, can you go back one? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So the existing, and I guess Dave, you call it, this is the parkway. This is the parkway, right?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
existing
Yeah.
Beech Mountain Park.
And the parkway kind of implies, you know, you're going fast, which is what it's designed for. We can go to the next one. You know, this is, I guess y'all know this, but basically the road is tilted, basically like, you know, a Indy 500 racetrack. And basically it's designed so you can easily go 45 miles an hour and not even feel gravitation, you know. And so even though it's posted 25, you know, basically it's designed for that kind of speed. This is really, really hostile for pedestrians. And also the fact that you don't really have sidewalks, and mostly just kind of parking lots out front in a lot of the sections. It's, you know, it's not really a walkable. I would say if we were going to transform this, and this is something y'all need to talk about, if you really want to transform this from a high-speed parkway into a walkable main street, then the section has to be modified with the street sections that we talked about. Next, please. So, and this is what it could look like. And maybe we can switch back and forth a little bit. You know, just kind of zoom. You can see, you know, so now we introduce on-street parking. We basically limit the amount of driveway cuts. We're actually taking the parking lot that's here and relocating it, you know, on the other side of the building. And then this becomes an outdoor place, a plaza with, shops and so forth that open up. Here's your town hall, and here's, basically a nice kind of green area out front as well, and there's room for, to add additional buildings. This is actually a new wing that comes off the pizza restaurant that comes out to the new sidewalk here. And here's the parking area, and of course crosswalks. We recommend, you could actually do kind of more, pavers within the parking areas and crosswalks. And then this becomes the pedestrian is, at the top of they're the ones that kind of in the roll, they take over. And the cars get through easily, but they're moving slowly, 15 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, and they're alert, they're looking around. The traffic still flows. And the other nice thing about that, because of how we're designing, is there are 2 additional major streets that actually take you from one end to the other. So in theory, we're reducing the volume by as much as 2/3 because it's being dispersed. And the folks that actually live here year round, like I guess a lot of you do, when you're actually coming, you're going, back and forth, you may want to kind of go this way, just see what's happening, or you pick up or stop and that kind of stuff. But also there's other couple, I know there's some secret ways of getting through here that no one, we have a secret way of getting through when the traffic's bad. But there'll be actually some really nice ways, additional ways for you to kind of transverse without disrupting the walkability. Next, please. Now, what does this look like? Well, part of my career has been repairing suburbia, repairing places that are completely auto-centric. And so we came up with a lot of kind of ideas about like taking existing strip shopping centers along highways and actually transforming them with more urban walkable zones. So you can see here, the street becomes the street is like a teeny tiny sidewalk, 3-4 feet wide, right next to cars going by at 45 miles an hour. People aren't really going to walk that. And so you basically create, wide sidewalks. You bring the buildings forward. You can grow the buildings out, and then these kind of like big parking lots out front become plazas that way. Now, if you've thought about, the pizza place that way, that's pretty interesting, isn't it? But we also know this, because I would say 60 to 70% of my work is working for private developers. It's like there's nothing more important than parking. There's nothing more important than convenient parking to your business if you want to survive. Unless you're incredibly, unless you're some unbelievable retailer that people will drive. They call them destinations. But this is nice convenience. This is good convenience, commercial and retail, and this is how you turn that type of thing into a walkable community. Next. So this kind of traditional plan starts creating the street and block network, and then you can start developing up to 35 feet if you want. And I think right now you can't do flat roofs, but we're going to start talking about that and seeing this kind of character, around that town center area. How we calibrate it, whether it's too much, not enough, that type of thing, the architecture. But you can see the streetscapes, on-street parking. Here's the main street that goes up to on axis with the views. It's just like Telluride and Banff have this kind of mountain peak at the end of their main street. And this is actually the sledding hill with shops and buildings around it. So the idea is that it's your town green. It's also your sledding hill. But people that actually, the parents that are watching their kids can maybe sit on an outdoor cafe while they're watching their kids run around in the snow and the ice, that type of thing. So y'all talk about how that feels. Okay, next. All right. Then the second idea is actually advancing more of that kind of organic plan. Next, please. And so this idea is similar to the other one in some ways, where these are the streets I was talking about that connect all the way from one end to the other. I think this actually keeps going all the way down behind the existing hotels to where the overlook is. So here's one way of getting through, and then here's another one where you go out and around the pinnacle. And I'm going to talk about parking for both of these, But, where we have these additional kind of, I'd say kind of like major streets versus maybe secondary streets, we can accommodate a lot of parking. Usually we recommend going diagonal one side and parallel on the other, so it doesn't feel like a parking lot, but there are literally hundreds of parking spaces, you know, just on this area for the development and also for visitors. And then there's also another way to get all the way through on this side, that we're calling a kind of a parking, it's a parking alley, you know, like basically a tree planted large parking area that's behind the existing businesses. And you can see here where the pizza restaurant's located. Basically all the parking that we're kind of taking away from Main Street here is located basically immediately adjacent to the existing businesses just on the other side. And what that allows you to do is make this a really walkable area, and this is just kind of a back area where, you know, basically people can come in. And this is kind of nice, as opposed to having a large parking lot or a large parking garage somewhere that, you know, you still have to walk 2 blocks to go get a pizza. Basically, every business you can see along Main Street has convenient parking immediately adjacent to their business. So when you're going out and looking for developers, they say, well, where are my customers parked? Well, right out front, the side. And also you have this great strolling district over here that you're gonna get a lot of foot traffic. So this is the strategy. It's not a traditional, you know, town grid type of thing, but we've done this on a lot of developments, a lot of town center developments, because we know the 2 things that drive everything: parking and sewage. It's amazing. Infrastructure is all about that. And if you do it well, then it works out very successfully. Now this is part of this is that we have this really nice organic green finger, very similar to the one I showed you in the traditional plan. It's just straight up and down. So you're still getting this type of linear kind of, you know, weaving through with a lot of green space. And the question is this too much green space or not enough? You know, how much development property do we have? We have some basic numbers about that we can tell you. And then the other idea is this idea of not a traffic circle or roundabout, but actually a town circle. And I mentioned before the models of DuPont Circle in Washington, D.C. It was, you know, famous design by Leon Font, you know, French, you know, urban planner. And then also there's another one in Sarasota called St. Armand Circle. So, and when we were talking about this before, I was describing to everyone that a lot of places have a main street or a town square or a town green, but there are very few places that have a town circle. You know, that's your signature. That would make you it kind of gives you the difference between you and Blowing Rock or West Jefferson or Boone is that basically, you know, we have a town circle, you know, and it's kind of an interesting thing. So when you're talking with developers and trying to attract them, and you say, well, what's so good, you know, what's so different, what's so interesting about Beech Mountain besides just, you know, there might be some, you know, commercial property somewhere. You say, yeah, we're rebranding ourselves in a way that, you know, has, you know, kind of, you know, really has our own identity. So this is something that's possible. We consolidated 2 of the previous plans, one that just basically had the main street and one that had the circle, and basically said you can either do it with a circle or without the circle. And I think we'll show that in a minute. But the other thing that this does is that these are, instead of having square blocks, these are large blocks, large development sites, you know, kind of all down through this area. And so, you know, these are all really good for things like hotels or smaller businesses and buildings. These buildings are probably a little bit bigger than all the buildings in the restaurant area of Banner Elk, you know, with all the little courtyards. That's what this is showing. You know, so it's kind of this really nice village. So really kind of is an organic plan with more kind of a village scale. But it also accommodates, you can see, you know, hotels here. Also, all of this property along here, we have great hotel sites. So I don't know if the town wants to get into business of looking for hotels with their property, but that's another, you have the chance to actually go out and directly, work with some folks as well. So we'll see how that plays out. This also shows you the connection with this property back here, and how if you live back here, you have incredible views of Sugar and Grandfather, but you also walk straight right in to the center of town, and kind of the village circle here. Next, please. And this is the development land that you can see, and also the overlay with the properties. In this case, the putt-putt property would become a major part of the town circle. You can also see where the existing parkway goes and how the circle would overlay on that and ease up into, there's property in play all along the side, including the town's property. And then, so this is private property that would have to be negotiated. So this takes more time, but maybe, if there's some benefits to this, maybe it's worth the time later. Next, please. And then here's the plan. You see, really, you still have the major ways of getting through, and also this parking area here. But it's not kind of that smaller grid. It's really about green walkways, bikeways, nature connections, but also so it's more of kind of, I guess, it really is more of an organic village that way. With lots of trails, open space, and just trails everywhere. You can see just going through. It's really kind of I call it kind of a city beautiful model. Frederick Law Olmsted, the Olmsted Brothers, that type of thing. Next. And here's the the walking ways again, very easy to walk to. Next. Okay, and so this is the final illustrated plan. Now, this is Bill got when somebody, I think one of your staff was working at midnight last night back in Charlottesville, just to say, how do you drop a circle down here? I mean, this is a little bit smaller and doesn't go over into this area here, but the idea is that what we're actually proposing is a lot less complicated geometrically, but he actually figured out how to do it with a really complicated challenge. And for anybody that's been, this is more kind of the circle you would see, say, if you've been to Hilton Head, which people have a love-hate relationship with those down there. They are good for channeling traffic, but basically what they've proven is, yes, it really would work. And if we actually design it, as a town circle, it would actually work easier. So that's kind of interesting. And we appreciate Bill's staff doing that. Thanks, please. So that's what that looks like here. And then if like everybody said, well, we just don't want to circle. You can still have a great town green here, and just keep this as a beautiful main street. And that's what we want to show you all. We don't want to leave you a plan that's just so complicated that it's impossible. But this is still great. It's still great, but it's simple. All right. And here's some views. This is you can see where this is located next. Okay. This is from kind of hovering above the pinnacle, looking up towards the mountain. This is actually still looking at the peak here. Next. And this is kind of like maybe where you if you wanted to do kind of your mixed-use village, this section right here would be kind of more mixed-use and more dense housing. And then as you go out into this area, probably more residential until you got to the other side. And this is kind of hard to see. When it's colored, you'll be able to see this a lot better. But can you go back one? I'll show where this is. Go one. Okay. Well, I think there's a better view. Go back one more. Yeah, that one. Go forward. Okay. I think this view is starting here, up in the air, looking down this parkway towards this kind of anchored area here with a hotel. Okay, so keep that in mind. That road there. Okay. Yeah. So that's that road there. Comes down. There's a hotel and some additional housing mixed use. Here's the greenway coming up all the way, and there's a green finger that goes down. Here's Fred's. Right here, this greenway goes down to Fred's. Here's your kind of main street and some businesses, and then it this area, and there's another green finger here, and then there's another green finger here, and you can see how the housing in these kind of pods, these village pods, will be located this way. And then on the other side of the pinnacles outside of the picture, but there's all this opportunity for housing. This is where the town's property is, and we're showing some townhouses in there as kind of a placeholder. Okay? And stuff like this, some attached, some detached, this is kind of more of a character view. This is the kind of, you could actually have these kind of green fingers coming through, that you can walk along.
And that shows where we put all the snow.
Yeah, this is where the snow goes. So then the last thing that we didn't show on the first array we've been working on is the Gateway Center down on Buckeye Lake, the recreation center. And this is the master plan that we developed. We had one feedback loop while we were here on this, which is very helpful, because we had a couple things that were not very correct, or actually some additional ideas that were great ideas. One is that we thought we might be able to create a large flat area for parking, additional parking, but that's where you have your sewage treatment plant, which is kind of in this area here. So that was something that, and so let me give you some references. We don't have an existing area of this. Okay, so this is the recreation center in red, and here are the ball fields behind it. This is the kind of the plateau. I think we do have some visuals, 3D visuals, so we'll show that in a second. And then where you enter into the rec center is this road that comes down the hill here, and there's that kind of 5 points intersection where all these roads collide together, kind of in the low area. So what we ended up doing is figuring out how we could actually create a village green there. And then the idea is what kind of uses might be appropriate there is actually putting in a corner store with gas pumps behind it. And there are actually a lot of fueling stations now do this model when they're working on Washington. So I'll show you what that looks like. And then looking at a lot of the large lots and open space, kind of within, say, a walking distance, even though this topography is a little bit more challenging. This is still probably, if you're using trails, combination of trails and roads, it's still probably a 5-minute walk, maybe a little bit more, with all this area. And this was the existing campground that got washed out. And then these are some of the large lots along the edges. Let's go forward and see what else we have on this one. Yeah, so this shows you, this is really helpful, I think, because it shows you, here's the, I call it the plateau, that has the rec center here. These are not, it's still 2-dimensional photographs, but it's overlaid on topography. The rec center is
To the right.
right here. Yeah, right here. And then this is kind of where it drops off in the back, and here's the lake. And here's where the waterworks is. And this was the rough sketch that we just, the version that we showed you previously is more of the refined version. But this was a rough sketch, just showing all this is just basically using your existing system of trails and then basically completing them or adding to them based on places that might benefit from those. The other thing that we did, keep going. Let's just look at okay. Is this another view?
Mm-hmm.
Here's another view. Yeah, it kind of shows you some of the layouts here. We've got some details of this kind of because there are different pieces to it. Okay. Here's coming out of the rec center at that kind of 5 points intersection here. And the idea that you have these kind of ridge lines coming down, it's actually a pretty mild ridge line coming down here. And also there's a steep bank right here that we could start looking at this as more of a village green. So this shows you how we would create a village green here. You could potentially line the edge of the rec center. You can go back to the other one too, I think that's good. The edge of the rec center with buildings that are probably not any taller than actually the lawn out here. So maybe, I don't know, it does show like 1 story, depends on how tall these are. But you're really almost like 30 feet in the air here. These buildings might be a little bit out of scale. And then you can actually kind of grow along the edges of those if this area becomes an amphitheater, an outdoor amphitheater, then these kind of ridgeline cottages could have back porches that are like box seats that overlook the events that are going on for people that will enjoy that. And then also across here is the corner store with the gas pumps out back. And then this ridge I just thought was a really nice place for a small grouping of housing structures that could be an inn or a small club, depending on how it was operated, a boutique type location with, 30 minutes and, central building. And, how it kind of fits through here. And you might be able to extend down the street here a little bit towards the waterworks building, but we're not sure. Next. Yeah, and this is what it looks like. And this is the plan close up. This is the gas station with the pumps out back, and then the corner store, the inn over here, and then here's the amphitheater. This is I think we're still, the amphitheater is in this location here, and so forth. Next. Now, this is what I mean when I talk about a gas station. This is the typical gas station you see on every street corner on major highways. Basically, the highway, it's 5-laner, 7-laner out here. You pull in, you get your gas, and there's a store in the back. What you do when and then we kind of an anecdotal term we call this is called gas backwards, and basically it means that the building turns around and has a walkable entrance as a primary entrance, but you still can easily get your gas through this way. And and it is a great model. You can just use it. You can basically apply it, and then people don't perceive of gas stations as being noxious. Oh, we don't want a gas station anywhere near us. Well, how about a corner store that just happens to sell gas? It's that kind of thing. Start thinking that way. Next. So some of the things that we talked about in terms of around the village were you had a small number of camping sites. There might be an opportunity to do more of those. There might be an opportunity to create different price points of camping. It's called glamping. You've probably heard about it. It's like, it's a really elegant way of camping. And also you're up on platforms, so, you get, if there's flooding and stuff like that, you can kind of somewhat mitigate that. But y'all seen images, I'm sure. I mean, every magazine shows this lifestyle. But just to show you, this is not, rustic camping in a sense. This is pretty nice stuff. And I imagine, because this is like an incredible place. I mean, this whole town is beautiful. I mean, there's probably a great opportunity for this kind of fun stuff for people. Next. And so that kind of thing could be where you had your existing campground, kind of up out of the flood zone around the perimeter. I think this is out of date because I think this whole area got scoured during Helene. But the opportunity of introducing maybe some of that here. Also, this point out on the reservoir would be a great location for that. And then also, all the big lots, there are a lot of platted lots that have been sold, but very little's been built on at this point. And I think, this might be the next direction of where housing development goes for various reasons. And so what we wanted to do is say, okay, instead of just everything being a 150 by 150 lot with a house right in the middle of it, why don't we think about, because you're in a location that's going to have a lot more amenities, and therefore that kind of attracts people, and they're not so concerned about getting away from it all and having a really private home in the woods. They actually want to be kind of near the amenity, and therefore and maybe living closer together. So it might be there are different techniques for taking some of your large lots and subdividing them. Maybe you could get 2 houses or more, or you could actually look at taking, this is your standard size lot, is actually allowing something besides one main structure. And we call these compound houses, and we've heard that families are already doing this where it's multi-generational. You actually have a compound that has different functions of a house. The kitchen, living, and dining is in the main house. The master suites in another cottage. The bunk rooms with all the screaming teenagers are over here, and then the granny flat or that kind of thing is also located. So it's like 3 generations, or it's just like a large family with a lot of siblings that come for a family weekend and get a little bit more more privacy versus just being in the monster house. Yeah, I think that house we're staying in sleeps 35 or something like that. So anyway, so these are just different, and the other one, and then subdividing a 150 into two houses that have smaller footprints. The same size footprint as one house, so it's the same level of impervious surface, but but more vertical. So examples of those. This is a family compound. This is like a 150 by 150 lot on flat. This is just a flatland version. You can see here. Here's the main house. Here's the family. Here's the master suite wing. Here's the granny flat, and here's the teenager cottage. Just that kind of thing. And you can locate it in a way that actually then you have a shared central green and kind of courtyard area that everybody comes out into. And you can do them really beautifully. And also the cool thing is you can just start by building that. You start with that, and then a couple of years later you do this, and then a couple of years later you do that, and then you finally build that, and then you're living in that, and then when you downsize, you move back into this, and let your grandkids or your kids take over the main house. So it's a multi-generational thing that works really well. And you can see how those would be arranged here. Next. And I think we've got some examples of the tree houses as well. Okay, can you go back one? I'm sorry. All right, so there's another place. Here's the rec center, and there's another place up around the curve here that has large lots as well. And the town owns a couple of these, I think, in this location, like right in here, and they own all this property. And right now, there's an existing road here and here, but there was an opportunity to introduce another road in between, so the people that own these lots, including the town, could then create more housing in a smaller area. I think there are 4 houses on 2 lots here, for example. And then this is a very steep slope, and so these kind of vertical houses, we call them tree houses, and I'll show you some we built in other places, could be included here, and you can add an additional street that comes down. This is too steep. And then also down here, this type of more dense cottage housing, we call these pocket neighborhoods or pocket courts. They're very popular. You park on the roads on the top or bottom, and then you walk down 1 or 2 houses to get to your house. And there's a limited market for that, but you have a shared green space in the front. I'll show you what that looks like too. Here's one I designed in Black Mountain called Jacob's Court, Jacob's Pocket Neighborhood. And you can see there's 2 oval greens here, and this is what it looks like. I'd love for y'all to go visit it. These are really beautiful cottages, and they're great for downsizing people, and also for young families that just want to have a fun place for their kids right out front to run around and play without having a street, out front, that type of thing. So this is another way to actually start going more infill. Next. And then you have some kind of tree houses like this. These are the ones that are in Cheshire. We actually wrote our overlay zoning so that tree houses were only allowed to have a 25 by 25 footprint, as you can see here. But you're allowed to, do as many overhangs and balconies as you want. And also, typically they're on steep slopes. I think this one's not. But usually on steep slopes, so you enter on the middle floor. You have bedrooms upstairs and downstairs. And also what we found out is this kind of stuff, which to me looks like Swiss Family Robinson, I mean, it's like, this is like the birders, people that are into birding. They love these because they're up in the trees with the birds. So getting up in the air like that is something they're very, and these are very popular because of that. Okay,
right,
Dan.
thank you. Yeah. So those are the two concepts we're pushing forward. And just to conclude, I got to give a major thank you. If you were here 2 days ago, none of this existed. The stuff that was around the room, and it's because these guys work like crazy. So that's one picture. And I found out last night, even when they went home, they worked like crazy. They took all their computers. This is a hard-working group. Great job. Thank you all to the workshoppers. It's been extraordinary. And then the final thank you is to all of you guys, to the Town of Beech Mountain, and one more time, Caitlin, and to the Boulder Creek Event Center. You've been such wonderful hosts. Thank you so much. We've had a delightful time. Can't wait to come back. So, yeah.
steps, very quickly. The stuff that you see on the screen, that the ink is still wet, literally. There's a whole lot of stuff that we need to do next, which is a lot of measurements. How many houses? How many square feet of this and that? How many linear feet of road? Start to really figure out what's in these plans. Start to figure out how they might be phased. Start to figure out which really will work better for you so that we can come up with a final recommendation. So if you have thoughts about that, please let us know, which one is really speaking to you. And as far as dates go, we're going to wrap this completely up by October. So now we're kind of in a little bit of a quiet stage where we're going to take all this and sort of simmer it and boil it and figure it all out. And so there's still plenty of chances to, that we'll create that you can comment along the way. But I believe we have a council presentation set up for October. I'm looking at Kate, I don't know the actual date yet, but anyway, we really have appreciated all the public comments along the way, and I really look forward to delivering you all a final product. So thank you all very much.